Warning, listening to Unleash Your Genius can be good for your health.
Symptoms may include looking and feeling better,
More energy, healthier kids, and increased productivity.
Unleash Your Genius podcast brings you the science, art, and philosophy of health, wellness,
Epigenetics, and lifestyle.
Hey, Unleash Your Genius listeners, welcome. Today I've got a really special guest for you. Joe Condora is the creator of Primal Example, and he's the host of the Primal Example Podcast. Through Primal Example, Joe coaches high-profile clients on how to merge ancestral health with modern life using nutrition, movement, and biohacking techniques. Joe follows a ketogenic diet, and his interests include things like staying up to date on the latest health research and biohacking tools, and finding innovative ways to make oftentimes elitist health information accessible to the average person. Hey, Joe, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, man, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be on here and talk to your audience.
Yeah, man, I'm excited to have you too. I've been following you a bit on the social media. You've been pretty busy on sharing some stuff on Facebook. That's been awesome.
Yeah, I try to stay active. Thanks.
So I know I introduced you a little bit. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself? You know, what you like to do professionally and personally?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of nailed it there with the intro. But so what I do is pretty much daily. I'm just working on my brand, which is Primal Example. And what I like to do with that is I take research from journals, published journals, which is oftentimes really hard for the average person to understand. And I try to break that down in a way that's easily digestible. That way, because this information is great, but how do you apply it? How do you apply that information? And that's what's so valuable that people need to hear. And that's what I try to be. I try to be that middleman from the research journals to the people. And in terms of my non-professional life, I like to hang out with my girlfriend just like everybody else. I kind of annoy her with all this health talk, but we like to go on long walks, coffees in the morning, all that good stuff. But most of it's all professional, man. I love doing what I do.
She compliments you really well from what I see. She's really into the health lifestyle as well, isn't she?
Yeah, well, thank you for the compliment. But yeah, I dragged her into this lifestyle, and she's come along with me, and she's doing great.
Hey, I see you do a lot about the ketogenic diet. You follow a ketogenic diet pretty closely.
Yes.
That's been really popular in the last little bit. Can you tell us about that? Like, let's start at what ketosis is.
Sure. So what ketosis is, and I'm going to oversimplify it, obviously, because that's a whole book right there. But it's basically a metabolic state where your body is burning something called ketones instead of glucose. Because traditionally, I don't know how much your listeners are familiar with ketogenic diets, but traditionally we all burn glucose or sugar, and that's where we derive our energy from. But there's an alternative fuel source that many people don't know about, known as ketones. And what these ketones are, when you burn ketones, you're basically burning stored fat. So it's basically being in ultimate fat burning mode. And I've been following that for about a year or so now.
So what does the diet look like? What I've heard a lot of people say that it's hard to follow. Can you give us a look at what it looks like?
Yeah. It's not necessarily hard to follow. It's definitely hard to do it right. I'll tell you that much. And a lot of people don't do it right. And this is why I don't recommend it to most people unless they're going to work with a professional who knows what they're doing. So basically what the ketogenic diet looks like in terms of a macronutrient profile, it's going to be about 75 to, let's say 80% fat, and then maybe 10% protein, 10% carbohydrates. And you're not going to go over 60 grams of carbohydrates per day in total. Now, person to person, that can vary based on activity levels, based on genetics, things like that. But that's basically what the macronutrient profile looks like. And if you want, I could break down like what my plate would actually look like. Absolutely. Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, so for breakfast, what I'll generally do is the ever popular butter coffee, right? Your listeners may not be familiar with that. So what that is you take a cup of coffee and you blend it with about a tablespoon of grass-fed butter and a tablespoon of, I use MCT oil, but people can use coconut oil. And I use MCT oil because it converts directly to a ketone, but we won't have to go into that. So that will be my general breakfast, and that will get my ketone levels relatively high. And I won't need to eat until about 2 or 3 p.m., which at that time I'll have a nice big salad with all real greens. When I say greens, I don't mean iceberg lettuce. I'm talking about spinach, chard, kale. And then I'll load that up with more MCT oil, avocado oil, all these different healthy fats. I'll put avocado on there, maybe some canned oysters or some sort of fish like that. And that's going to break down to about the perfect macronutrient profile. So that's what my breakfast and lunch would look like. And in terms of dinner, that could be a little bit more loose. I'll have probably like a 8 ounce, maybe, yes, let's call it a 6 ounce steak with a big side of steamed greens, whether that be broccoli or Brussels or kale. And then I'll load that up with butter and MCT oil, and I'll measure my ketones, and I'm good to go. I'll measure at like a 1.5 to a 2, which is not too high, but just the right amount to get the benefits without some of the problems that come with ketosis, because there is problems that I make sure to tell people, you know?
Okay, so tell us about those problems.
Yeah, sure. So, and I've had the problems, man. I've had the good parts, I've had the bad parts. So if you go too low carb for too long, and depending on the person, you know, that's where the length varies. Let's say if you're super ketogenic for about 2 weeks, so you're keeping your carbohydrate intake below 60 grams, 50 grams a day, you're going to start having some thyroid dysfunction because your thyroid actually needs a certain amount of insulin to function properly. And as you know, and your listeners probably know, when you eat carbohydrates, you get that blood sugar spike, which then causes the insulin spike. So if you're not getting that insulin, your thyroid can start to malfunction, not necessarily malfunction, but be underactive. So it could really crush your metabolism and kind of have the adverse effect, because a lot of people go on ketogenic diets for weight loss. But if you do this too long term without refeeding, that's a real popular term, doing a carbohydrate refeed, that could mess with the thyroid. Now, also, your adrenals do require a little bit of insulin to function properly. And when you're on a ketogenic diet, a strict one, long term, you're causing serious stress to your adrenals. And you're going to have adrenal burnout, which basically means that too high stress and your adrenals are going to burn out, you're not going to be able to produce some beneficial hormones and be stimulated anymore. So you're going to be feeling very, very low energy because you're not going to have those stimulating hormones anymore. So it's really important that you refeed with carbohydrates, depending on how active you are, at least every week, I would say.
Okay, so you do the ketogenic diet. You're pretty strict 6 days of the week, and then you allow some excess carbs in to stimulate that response and to give your body that's going to change whether I'm, heavy lifting or what my goal is. So if you're heavy lifting or you're very active, let's say you're doing CrossFit every day, you can probably get away with like 80 to 100 grams of carbohydrate, depending on what that carbohydrate is, So you want low insulin spiking foods. But if you're doing really intense stuff, you can get away with way more carbohydrate. So for someone who is just tuning in that has no idea, even what a carbohydrate is, Joe, can you, let's look at, let's say 50 grams of carbohydrates a day. What would that look like? I know that we're going to get our carbohydrates from healthy sources, from plants, right? We're not so how much on a table or on a plate would 50 grams kind of look like? Can you give us a rough estimate of what that would look like without having to measure or weigh stuff?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I don't weigh or anything like that. And anyone could track their carbohydrate intake with apps like MyFitnessPal or something like that. But generally, you can have a nice handful, a palm full of berries, and you'll still be all right under the 50. You can do a bunch of leafy greens, because when we're talking about carbohydrate intake, we're talking about net carbohydrates. And what that means is fiber is technically classified as a carbohydrate, but it doesn't have that same effect on blood sugar. So when you see that spinach, for example, has 10 carbohydrates and there's 7 grams of fiber, you have to subtract that. So basically what that means is that only has 3 carbohydrates that impact your ketosis. So you can get away with basically unlimited amounts of green leafy vegetables. You can get away with a palm full of fruit, maybe it's hard to say because I don't eat like pasta or bread anymore, you know what I mean?
Right, yeah.
So maybe like, let's say per day you can get away with a handful of berries and a handful of quinoa or something like that. And you're going to be around the 30 to 50 range right there.
Okay. Yeah, cool. Thanks, Joe. Here's what, an easy way to do it is to Google carb counter. Atkins has a great carb counter, and it'll show you like how much a half an apple, how many grams of carbs are in half an apple or half a cup of blueberries, or how much grams of carbs are in a cup of spinach. So you can get an idea and plan out your day that way. And so is it necessary for people to measure? Do we have to have a ketometer, or is it necessary, number one? And number two, what's the best way to measure?
Yeah, that's one of my biggest pet peeves is these people on the internet talking about ketosis and, hashtag keto. And I'm like, look, how do you know? I don't believe you because I do this. I know how hard it is to get in ketosis. So the only way to accurately measure ketones for the average person is to get a meter where you actually prick your finger like you do with if you're diabetic. You test your blood on a little meter, and that's going to tell you how many ketones you have in your bloodstream. There is other ways to do it. There's a breath test, which isn't that popular, so we're not going to, I guess, get into that. But there's also a urine test. But the problem with the urine test is that it only tells you how many ketones you're excreting through your urine. And when you become good at burning ketones, you don't excrete them through your urine. You use them for energy. So I've actually done this test personally where I will go use the urine strip, show no ketones on that strip, then I'll immediately go measure my blood, and I'll be at a 2 on the ketosis meter, which is pretty high. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't accurately measure it, for someone who's doing long-term keto.
Right. Okay. So I remember as I was studying that for a long time, 5-10 years ago, ketones and ketosis was always had a negative stigma because of there's a dangerous side of things called ketoacidosis. Mm-hmm. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Or
yeah, I could definitely talk a little bit about it. If you know much more about that, you could speak about that because I would like to learn more about that as well.
Well, I just remember, I know there's 2 different types. You're right. There's the diabetic ketoacidosis, and there's also an alcoholic ketoacidosis, which someone who's damaged their liver through too much alcohol, they're not going to be able to process the ketones as well. And I think the high amount of ketones, like what the name says, it creates too much acidity in the blood. And so for a rare few people who either have a damaged liver or type 1 diabetes, that can be a dangerous situation. And measuring the ketones through a ketometer, like what you said, you're around 1.6 millimoles per deciliter. That's like the normal range. 0.5 to 3 is normal. 3 to 6 would be like starvation. And then any ketoacidosis is way up at like 15 milligrams per deciliter where it becomes dangerous.
Yeah, exactly. So when you get above there, research is just starting to look at this. So when you get above 3, you're kind of not receiving as many benefits that you go on a ketogenic diet for. So you're not you're kind of just overdoing it for no reason. Not that it's necessarily harmful at 3, but there just seems to be, you might as well be between the 0.5 and the 2. You're going to get all the benefits, and you don't have to really kill yourself as much to get there,
Awesome. Yeah. Hey, so Joe, what about, I've been seeing some supplements lately, something that, that you take that puts you in ketosis without, I'm not sure, you might have to change your diet a little bit, but are you familiar with any of these?
Yeah, I'm a little bit familiar with the exogenous ketone supplements. So just to break that down, exogenous would mean from outside the body. And what you do is you take these ketone salt supplements, they're called, whether it's a powder or whatever, and it does boost your blood ketone levels to a measurable effect, which is good because you're going to be able to burn those ketones. And that's good for anyone who's like a marathon runner, who still wants to rely on a little bit of glucose for energy fuel, which, that's what you want to do, go for it. I don't agree or disagree. But these ketone supplements can boost your blood ketone levels, so you'll burn them off. Now, if you're not following a strict ketogenic diet, you're just going to go start burning glucose after that. So, there's kind of, it's a measurement. How do you want to do it on the scale? Do you want to just burn them off and then be back to normal? Or do you want to follow this lifestyle and always have those ketones to rely on?
Right. It seems like putting your body in the environment that produces ketosis is more natural, healthier than, outside in putting in these chemicals that give you some ketones for a short term. I don't know, maybe for energy boost, but it doesn't seem, I don't know, as natural, but to each his own, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they seem to be, I'm not against advancement. You know what I mean? That's what my brand talks about, is merging ancestral health with modern living. So we want to use these advancements, but intelligently. Right. There's, for me, not enough research out there. And I just don't see the benefit of taking an exogenous supplement when you could just do it yourself. But if you do want to use it as a little hack once in a while, like you said, hey, to each their own.
Hey, Joe, I just want to switch a little bit. So
sure.
You're a coach, you're a health coach. So I want to put you up on stage in front of a huge group of people that are just about to embark on a lifestyle change for the first time. What are your 3 tips to starting some kind of coaching program, or being coached, or just doing it on your own? What are some tips that you would give people starting out on changing their lifestyle?
Yeah, sure. That's a good question. The first thing I would say is what we talk about on my podcast often, which is you can't out-diet a stressful life. If you are stressed out, your body changes what it actually does with the food that you consume. So the only way to maximize what you eat, just anything in life, is to control your stress. Because let's say, for example, if you eat a piece of protein, right? You eat a nice steak. Oh, that's healthy. Great. Grass-fed, organic steak. Perfect. You're doing great. Your body can actually turn that into sugar in the body if you are overly stressed out. So you might think, for example, I'm ketogenic, not to bring that topic back, but, you're ketogenic, I'm going to eat this 6-ounce steak. But your body can change that into sugar within the body if you're overstressed. So whether you're ketogenic or just trying to live a healthier life, one of the things you have to keep in mind is that stress plays such an important role in what your body does with the food that you eat. You can't just eat anything you want and then hate your life and think you're going to be healthy.
That's a great point, Joe. I hope you don't mind me interrupting, but when you are under stress, your body releases hormones like cortisol, epinephrine, norepinephrine, so that you're prepared for when a tiger's chasing you. But if it's chronic, never-ending, all-day, everyday stress, it's going to burn you out and have your body running in a high-stress state that is not healthy to be in for long periods of time. Our bodies won't digest food properly. We won't be able to concentrate, focus. Our body is designed to be under stress for short bursts and then get back to being relaxed once the tiger's gone. And then we can rest and digest in that autonomic nervous system. Great point, Joe. Please carry on. What was number 2?
The second thing I would say is just to eat real food. We get so caught up in the paleo, primal, vegan, raw vegan arguments, and we spend so much time fighting with each other, everybody on the internet, and that we forget we're kind of promoting the same thing with like a 10% difference. We all know we should be eating more vegetables. We all know that we should be eating real food. If you want to go eat your white rice or your quinoa, hey, go for it. At least it's real food. Get away from the processed stuff, all the stuff in packages that's loaded with added sugars and all these artificial chemicals and vegetable oils and things like that. And let's just get back to real food And then once you're at that place, then we could start talking about how to further improve that. So number 1, you can't out-diet a stressful life. Number 2, eat real food. And number 3, I would say, is get your sleep right. Because just like stress, if you're not sleeping right, you are not going to be healthy. And there's studies that show just 24 hours of sleep deprivation can make you as insulin resistant as a diabetic. You're going to be looking similar to a diabetic just from being sleep deprived for 24 hours. And once again, that's changing what your body does with the nutrients. You're going to be storing more fat. Your stress levels are going to be higher. Your hormones are going to be off. And hormones are a big issue these days. So all these different things can be improved by sleep. And so those would be the 3, I would say. Awesome.
Hey, Joe, and this podcast is all about helping people get into that, change that lifestyle that our modern life has put on our genes and our genetics. And changing that is, for a lot of people, difficult. Bringing on those changes, and I think real life changes from people like you. Did you ever struggle in the beginning? When you started to learn about how health worked and the ancestral health, did you struggle changing any part of your lifestyle at all?
I never struggled changing my lifestyle, but I will tell you I was doing it wrong in the beginning, and I'm probably, we all still learn and we get better, and I'm probably still going to be improving tomorrow and the next day. But in the beginning, I was still doing it wrong, man. I was doing the insanity program, which is just kills your body, wreaks havoc on your hormones. And for breakfast, I was eating like an egg white omelet with carrots and, just not doing it right. And I have the type of personality where it's like, if I'm in it, I'm in it. Like, there is no medium. So I've never really struggled with any sort of giving certain foods up or anything like that. But I will tell you that I was doing it wrong. Now I'm doing it better, but probably still not perfect.
Whole wheat pasta was
Oh yeah, count me in for that. Whole wheat pasta.
Yeah, cool. What does your exercise look like now? Like, what's a typical week maybe for you?
Yeah, so the exercise is mostly walking. So basically, I'll go on a walk every day, preferably in nature. Certain times I'll use the treadmill if I can't get out, but preferably I'll go for over an hour walk in nature to get the benefits of nature as well as the benefits of the walk. So it's like a double 2-for-1 special there. And maybe 2 or 3 days a week, I'll do some sort of strength training. So I will do multi-joint compound movements. Like, I'll do deadlifts, I'll do squats, and I'll do snatches, clean snatch presses. And that'll be it. I'll just hit those 3 major movements, maybe an ab move, and I'll get out. I'll be out of there in 30 to 40 minutes just to stimulate that nervous system and those major muscle groups. But generally, it's just walking with a little bit of strength in there.
Right. So you don't walk out of there depleted, crawling out with panting and sore muscles the next day? Or
Well, no, generally no. But one time I did do a heavy deadlift session, and then I took some niacin and hit the sauna afterwards. That was the worst idea I've ever had. So, but generally, I'm walking out feeling pretty good.
Right. Okay, cool. Hey, Joe, so you've got a podcast, the Primal Example Podcast.
Yep. Primal Example Podcast.
How's that going? You love it?
Oh, it's fun, man. I love doing the research for the podcast and thinking about fun ways to get the audience to understand the actual complex topic,
Yeah. I like your idea of doing the research, breaking down the research and explaining that simply. That's such a great idea. So, Joe,
yeah, thank you.
How can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, so on all the social media platforms, you could find Primal Example, which is PrimalExample. You could do that on Twitter, Facebook. You could find me everywhere on there. Obviously, just search for the Primal Example Podcast. I'm there as well. And you can find me. I'm out there, guys.
I'll have all the links of all of your stuff on our show notes as well, so you'll be easily accessible.
Sounds good to me.
Hey, Joe, anything you want to leave us with?
No, I mean, we covered all the bases there, man. I appreciate that.
Hey, no worries, man. It's been awesome having you. Thanks for showing up today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was fun talking, man.
Thanks so much for listening to Unleash Your Genius with your host, Dr. Brian Peterson. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit unleashyourgenius.com. We'll catch you next time.